Here at Fayette County Reservoir, we have Mike McLelland on the water, answering some of the most common questions he hears when it comes to crankbait fishing.
You know, one thing about it, I mean, time of year isn't that big of a deal when it comes to crankbait fishing. I mean, almost every month of the year, somewhere in the United States, you're going to be able to catch fish on crankbaits. It's all a matter of the action you choose, you know, how deep the fish are, what you want to be looking for when you're cranking. So, you know, we're here in Central Texas right now, going to get out and play around with 2 or 3 different crankbaits today. I mean, some of these fish could have actually spawned. Some of them, more of them are probably pre-spawn, but it's a perfect time of the year for a crankbait. There's no denying that. One of the biggest things that you've got to do when you're throwing a crankbait is figure out, for the style of crankbait you're throwing, what the best way to retrieve that bait's going to be. Sometimes a faster retrieve will keep it, you know, bouncing off the top of the rocks, and then there's other times that you may need to slow that retrieve down to just kind of keep that bait hovering over the rock. There's one right there. See how that fish bit right when I sped it up? I mean, that's the whole thing, is you've got to let the fish tell you what they want. I'd been winding that bait fairly slow, and about the time I got it to the boat, I sped it up just a little bit, thinking my cast was over, and that's when he got it. Pretty nice little fish. He doesn't have the bait very good, but a pretty nice one. Not bad at all. Little Spro Rock Crawler 50 got it done. That's the Missouri craw color, and you know, it's just one of those deals. You've got to be aware of what's going on when you're throwing a crankbait. So many people make that mistake of just chunking it out, winding it back to the boat, and never putting any action or any variance in the retrieve. Get another one. Whenever I'm throwing a crankbait, probably 80% of the time, maybe even 90% of the time, I'm going to be throwing it on Sunline Crank FC. You know, there's those certain situations where you may throw monofilament. Some guys may even throw braid occasionally, but if you're one of those guys that wants to throw braid, I would definitely recommend going from like an SX braid to a Crank FC to give yourself a little bit more stretch. That's the biggest thing you want to do when you're throwing a crankbait, is you want line that has some stretch in it. And when you tie a crankbait directly to braid, it is so, you know, it just doesn't have any stretch, and it doesn't give those fish that ability to suck the bait in like they need to suck it in.